And thank you very much indeed. A man from Lincolnshire has set up a campaign group which he says is aimed at protecting freedom of speech. Harry Miller was spoken to by Humberside Police after he retweeted a poem about transgender women, which some people found offensive. Mr. Miller was not arrested or charged with anything and has complained that his freedom of expression is being suppressed. Caroline Bilton has the story.
Social media has become the platform from which many air their views these days, but there are some who feel their freedom of speech on these platforms is being curbed. Harry Miller from Lincolnshire is one of them. He was spoken to by police after retweeting a limerick that appeared to mock transgender people. It was recorded as a hate incident.
Are you transphobic?
Not remotely. This is not about being anti-trans. This is all about telling the police to respect the law. European Convention of Human Rights say that we are able to engage in lawful political discussion without any interference whatsoever, and yet police have sought to shut me up and shut me down.
So he's taking his case to the High Court, claiming the policing guidelines curb his ability to free speech within the law. So what is a hate incident? According to the College of Policing guidelines, it's a non-crime incident, which means the law hasn't been broken. A hate incident is when it's perceived by anyone to be motivated by a hostility or prejudice. It becomes a crime when the law is broken, and it escalates to include assaults, criminal damage and harassment.
In any case where people report an incident of hate, that we record it, we investigate what's happened, and then we take a proportionate action. And in some cases that will mean that there's no further action because an incident doesn't mean that a crime has been committed. But in some cases a crime will have been committed and it will require a criminal justice intervention.
When the police start acting not based upon law but based upon ideology, and certain interest groups can weaponise the police, then I think it's up to regular citizens like me to say no, and that's what we're doing.
Ricky Arundel is a gender speaker in Hull. She personally didn't find Harry's tweet offensive, but feels the response to it only helped fan the flames.
I didn't actually think it was that offensive. It wasn't something I'd have thought. In normal cases, it would have just gone past and ignored it. It's riled up Harry. And he's obviously got really annoyed, and I can understand, he's an ex-cop himself. He's got really annoyed about this, and his
Is he right to be annoyed, do you think?
I think the way he was treated, yes, he was right to be annoyed.
Do you accept that what you tweeted was offensive?
I accept that some people were offended by what I tweeted. Offensive speech is part and parcel of free speech, and we're offended by things people say all the time. We have to draw a line, and that line is the law.
It's interesting, isn't it? That's Harry Miller ending that report from Caroline Bilton. What's your view on this story? Should the police be challenging people like Harry for what they say online? Is it free speech, or should comments that some people find offensive be investigated? Or are we offended too easily these days? Should police get involved in free speech or not? Do we need to find these people who say things? You can email in, as I say. You can tweet me now, get it straight away in the studio. Peter_Levy tweet, or text 81333 and start the text with the word Look North. I'd be very keen to get your views. One in already very quickly from Thomas. He says, as long as free speech isn't inciting violence, it shouldn't be censored at all. We'll have some more in just a moment. Look forward to hearing from you.
Right now we're going to end my show with a conversation about, well, free speech. If you're a regular listener, you'll know it's something about which I feel very strongly, very concerned, particularly about the police harassing people online over tweets that they say are offensive or breach their hate crime guidance. Well, let's talk about all of this with Harry Miller. He's one of the founders of FairCop, an organisation campaigning for the College of Policing to change their hate crime guidance. Good morning to you, Harry.
Hi, Julia. How are we?
Very well indeed. Now, your Twitter handle is Harry the Owl, and you call yourself Limerick Criminal. Explain that, why you were called that.
Well, for starters, I didn't write the limerick. All I did was retweet limerick that was, and it wasn't even a limerick. It was some verse written by Ali B as part of a song. So yeah, I retweeted it. I'm a regular tweeter, and I'm gender critical. get critical. What I mean is I do not believe the mantra that trans women are women, and I think the mantra trans women are women is incredibly dangerous in that it rides roughshod over sex-based rights. So I'm doing something about it.
We say gender critical again. I mean, it seems to me, and I think to 95% of people who are listening, and include actually by an awful lot of the trans women that I have spoken to on air over the last few months, that it is a statement of the bleeding obvious that a trans woman isn't a woman, because if you are born a man, you're not a woman. And while I don't know about you, I would certainly endorse people being able to live their best lives and live the lives they want to lead and do whatever they do to as long as they don't harm anyone else but other people in any harm's way, to live how they wish to live. However, that doesn't mean they have the right to control the language that you or I or anyone else has to use, other than not being able to. People shouldn't shout abuse or tweet abuse to people because they are anyway different. What do you actually want to change there as part of your campaign?
Well, you say it should be obvious. It's not obvious. Well, it's obvious to normal people and right-minded people, but it's not obvious to the College of Policing. And it's definitely not obvious to Humberside Police, who, when I said to Inspector Wilson in March, look, I'm part of a political debate. The government has called us to engage in the political debate. How do I say I do not believe that trans women are women without it hurting somebody's feelings? And he said to me, why would you say that? Why do you feel the need to say that? Because that is hurting people's feelings. And I reminded him of my Article 10 rights, and he said, well, if that's what you think, sue us. So we're obliging.
Article 10, of course, being the European Convention on Human Rights, your right to free expression. What are you actually suing them for?
We're not suing them. We want them to withdraw immediately their guidance, which instructs police to record as a hate incident anything that is perceived by the victim as being hate. By the way, no evidence of hate or, in fact, an incident is necessary for it to be recorded as a hate incident. We think that this is bizarre, ludicrous and absolutely illegal. So we're holding it to account.
A lot of people might say, what does it matter what people are tweeting? This doesn't really have no real effect on people. But of course, we've had a number of cases of people actually brought to court for the cases, and people being taken off social media, often be a very big part of their working lives. But also we've had the case, haven't we, of Maya Forstatter. She has lost her job where she was after she blogged and voiced criticism of aspects of trans activism at work, at her workplace, and she has basically decided to take them. She basically, again, the same statement. She said that trans women aren't women. She wasn't in any way aggressive or abusive about trans people, but just simply stated that trans women aren't women. And she's a senior researcher at a think tank. She has lost her job. She is now taking her former boss to court after she was accused of offensive language. She's having going to an employment tribunal. She's crowdsourcing the money to pay for that. And as I understand, the money is pouring in from a lot of people who equally had enough of being told what they can and can't say.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. We're also running a Crowdjustice campaign, which is on our We Are FairCop Twitter page, because taking on the government, taking on the College of Police is going to cost us a lot of money. All of the chips are stacked in their favour, and they've been relying on normal people like me, regular citizens, regular law-abiding citizens, to just shut up and go away. Because, in all honesty, when a PC or an inspector or an assistant chief constable, in my case, issues warnings and says, you haven't done anything wrong, but you better stop doing it now or else, and that's what they've said, the natural tendency is simply to obey. And that can't be right. That cannot be right in a democratic, free society.
But listen, you're a former police officer yourself.
Yeah, I am a former police officer myself.
So what has changed? Is it the political direction coming from the politicians, coming from the Home Office? Is it what's happening in the police training colleges? Is it senior police officers? Where did this all start? Because look, a lot of people right now are very, very concerned. We were talking earlier in the show about organised crime. People are concerned about the threat from terrorism. People are concerned about knife crime on our streets. People are concerned about fraud. All of these things, and we're constantly told the police do not have the resources, and yet they are bothering. We see again, I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of cases have come into the public eye where people are being contacted by police officers over a tweet they've sent, which the police have judged to be a hate crime, even when most, as you say, ordinary people would not view those tweets to be a crime.
Well, it comes from a combination of queer theory and a misunderstanding of the Macpherson report. The Macpherson report is a very, very good report, and it's absolutely right that the police are proactive about real hate crime. But there's a huge conflation between a bunch of idiot, racist white thugs murdering a black person at a bus stop and the police doing very little about it, and the police contacting people like me because we do not believe that trans women are women. That is a massive conflation. And we're just saying, no, this cannot happen, this cannot stand, and you cannot keep politicising and weaponising the police. So we're doing something about it.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Harry Miller, one of the founders of FairCop, an ex-coffer himself from Humberside, who was investigated by police over a poem. As it's the fact that it's people call it limerick, and it wasn't even a limerick. That's one of the things I find offensive. Do any words have to now mean what they actually are anymore? I have to say, he posted that on Twitter and got in trouble. I have to say, I'm fully supportive of this. I really do think that we have to protect our all of our rights. I like with votes. I'm not, wouldn't tell you how ever dream of telling you how to vote, but if you have a vote, you must use your vote. Whoever you vote for, you must use your vote. Otherwise, votes tend to lose value if they're not used. Same with freedom of speech. If you don't use your freedom of speech to express yourself, and that doesn't mean people abusing people, then you lose your freedom of speech, because people saying, oh, don't say that because someone doesn't like it, doesn't mean you have to shut up. Because someone doesn't like what you say, doesn't mean what you say is wrong. And it doesn't mean what you say is a crime. But I've managed to go through that my entire life.